Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei Was Neglected and Had Gigan. Final Wars Powers special movie. Before we start, please go support Broly Legendary 02 for writing that awesome fanfic. Now let's begin. This is the translated version I made. There will be some wrong he or she calling here because it's translated, so let me clear this. Issei is a male in this story. Prologue. The Haidu were a family like any other. The only thing that differentiated them was that they were very rich, since they owned a martial arts dojo, where many people from children to adults entered as inexperienced and left as great fighters. They had 3 children of who were very proud. Let's start with the eldest, Yuriko Haidu, a beautiful 21-year-old girl who worked as an arts teacher at Kuo Academy. Hiroku Haidu, the middle brother who was studying the 3rd year of high school at the same academy where his older sister worked, is 18 years old, and in his free time, he trained at the dojo that belongs to his parents. And finally, the youngest daughter of the Haidu family, Hitomi Haidu, a very beautiful 17-year-old girl who was studying the 2nd year of Kuo High School, but she was also the heroine of the factions and the bearer of the fearsome Welsh dragon, the Circuite. It was a very happy family. It could be said that it was very unified, but the reality was different since there was still a 3rd child, a son who had left home before having gone to the 2nd year of high school. This son was Issei Haidu, which only received contempt and humiliation. His parents called him useless, his friends left him alone, and he suffered abuse at school due to rumors that were not even true. Issei left the Haidu family and bought a small but cozy house on the outskirts of Kuo City. Despite having a miserable life, there was a light that illuminated all his darkness. That light was his girlfriend Inai Maraki. She was the only one who kept the light in the brunette's eyes, but that only lasted 2 weeks, since Issei had discovered something that would completely destroy him. Flashback. You could see Issei leaving the room with a bucket, a rag, a sponge and a broom. The reason is that he had to do maintenance in his room. Now he was heading to the warehouse where they kept the cleaning supplies among other things. But when he opened the door, he heard some moans coming from inside, so he opened the door carefully, and what he saw left him lifeless in his heart, since there was his girlfriend being penetrated by another boy while she was against the wall. And I. Groan, oh yes, give me more groan, destroy me. Boy. Well, who is better? Me or that fool Haidu? And I. Moan, obviously you, that idiot doesn't know how to treat a girl. Moan, I only agreed to be that idiot's girlfriend out of simple pity. Hearing that, Issei dropped the bucket, causing the 2 lovers to get alarmed and change quickly. Issei took out the necklace that his girlfriend gave him a few days ago, and then ripped it from his neck and threw it on the floor. Lightning began to fall. The chestnut only retreated until lightning fell behind him, thus disappearing. Inai left the warehouse with the boy, and they did not see anyone, only the cleaning things, but then Inai picked up something from the floor, seeing that it was the necklace that I gave to Issei. Then flashback. This is how the only reason for the existence of the shine in his eyes was lost. Now Issei became an empty shell. He no longer felt love, hate or pain. It was as if he were a living corpse. So time went by, everyone bothered him, hit him, humiliated him and insulted him for reasons he didn't do, but what no one knew is that all that hate, all that pain that he should feel, went to a place deep inside him. Hatred, sadness and pain made that being little by little free itself. Now we just had to wait for Issei Haidu to release his true potential, so that he would become the fearsome and threatening Gigan. Chapter 1. It was another day in the city of Kuo. The parents got up to go to work and start today's day. The students proceeded to go to their respective schools to start a very long and hard day of studying, but to a certain brunette wasn't like that. It was always the same routine for him. He got out of his bed, ate breakfast, took a short shower, and headed to the Kuo Academy. Until then everything was very calm, but when he entered the academy he began to receive looks of hatred and contempt from everyone, but he didn't care. It mattered and he continued walking until he reached his living room where it was the same. Student 1. Myron is Kuo's traitor. Student 1. The traitor should not be here. Student 2. Disgusting perverted traitor. That and more things they said to the brunette, who only remained sitting in his place looking at the window. When Professor Roswace came in, starting classes, but the brunette didn't pay attention and just looked at the window, seeing the cloudy sky, they passed. The first hours of class where the bell rang signaling that lunchtime had arrived, the brunette proceeded to leave to sit leaning against a wall in the back of Kuo. Issei. Sigh, who knew my life was this salty, first my parents, then my friends and colleagues, finally the woman I loved with all my being. But then he heard some people talking to someone, so without further ado, he decided to see what was happening, seeing a group of boys talking to a hooded man, but he managed to recognize that group of boys. They were the current boyfriends of the girls from the hidden club. Boy 1. Here is the other information about the academy clubs, Ria's boyfriend said. Well done guys, keep it up and your reward will be infinite, said the guy, making the girl smile in a disgusting way. By the way, haven't you had any problems? Boy 2. Nope, the truth is that both the teachers and the teachers are idiots, Akeno's boyfriend said. Boy 3. They believed that whole farce that Issei Haidu is the traitor, Asia's boyfriend said. Boy 4. Even the student council and those stupid spoiled girls from the club Kaneko and Ravel's boyfriend said. Boy 5. It's so funny to see how they beat him, Roswace's boyfriend said. Ha, I can imagine it, he said, and then put the documents away. This was the last thing I needed. Stay tuned since very soon everyone will know what we are capable of. Boy 6. Sure sir, Zenovia and Irina's boyfriend said. Saying that, everyone proceeded to leave there while the brunette left so that they wouldn't realize that he was listening to them all this time, but what no one knew was that a certain perverted brunette girl had recorded them as proof that her friend was innocent. Kiryu. Phew, this is worth gold, he said with a smile, and then changed to a serious one full of hatred. It's time for you to suffer the same thing that Issei-sen suffered. He said and then left his hiding place and headed to his classroom and then handed the evidence to the teachers so he could put an end to the suffering of his friend once and for all. But the guy. Haha, it was a good idea to use the idea of stealing information from the academy clubs as a facade to achieve my true goal, he said while reading the documents and then removing his hood, revealing his identity. Finally I will be able to have this planet under my control without that damn lizard interfering, he said, and then continued reading the documents, but for that I need time. I need time to be able to create my great masterpiece, he said, and then smiled maliciously. Luckily I already know how. After saying that, he began to walk until he entered a room where there were several images of different creatures as well as their positions. I will free the prisoners from their cages, he said maliciously. After all, the factions will not be a problem to deal with, the problem would be dealing with the humans and their creations, as well as the guardian monsters, he said seriously. Hahaha, so maybe I'll ask Rizavam and Cao Cao for help, and in exchange, I'll give them whatever they want, but anyway, let's start with this, he said snapping his fingers. In another part of the world. You could see how a seal was broken in what was in the depths of the ocean while roars were heard, but it was not only happening in the ocean, but also in what was the moon, in the depths. From a swamp and even in a desert area of the underworld, the beasts were ready to be released. Episode 2. It had already been a week since Issei Haidu discovered that the Gremory boyfriends were the true traitors of the academy, but even so everything remained the same. They always humiliated him and treated him badly. Kiryu only watched how they treated Issei as always, not she understood why nothing had changed if she had sent the video to the teachers. But that was when she saw her mistake, since most of the teachers had gone out to an academic board meeting, leaving only those who were not on the committee like Roswace or her boyfriend, and also seeing that she almost always spent time at the hidden club, she deduced that the one who saw the video was her boyfriend and deleted it before anyone else knew. Kiryu. Damn it, she said, angry and frustrated. What can I do to help you, Issei? But then an idea came to her. That's right, we are a couple of days away from the tribute, there I will prove your innocence, just hold on. A little more, he said looking through a window at the chestnut tree who was lying on the ground all beaten up. Just resist, my love. But Issei. He was standing up as if nothing had happened and just proceeded to dust himself off and then proceed to walk to her living room while she had a vacant, almost dead look. When I get to his living room I hear something that caught his attention a little. Student 1. Hey, do you know what happened with Anai-san? Student 2. According to what they told me, she fell into depression, making her not leave her room. Student 1. But why did he fall into depression? After hearing that, he proceeded to look at the window again to start the day again. As always, he did not pay attention to any class. He was beaten and humiliated by all the academy clubs. Everything was the same until he left the academy, but when he crossed the gate, he saw a chaste girl accompanied by an orange-haired girl. Sally, come here now, we have to go home, the others are waiting for us, he said, chasing the little girl. Reach me if you can, Aunt Chucky, the little girl said amusedly, crossing the street. Chucky. Sally, come Sally, be careful. When she screamed that, the little girl saw how a truck was going to run over her, but then the brunette appeared hugging her and turning around so that he received the impact and not the little girl. At the moment of receiving it, she flew a couple of meters away and then fell unconscious. This action left everyone at the academy more than stunned and a very worried Kiryu, who was on the roof of the academy, but when she saw that, she quickly went down the stairs to go help the brunette. Sally. Excuse me, okay, she said, shaking the brunette a little. Chucky. Sally, we have to go, she said, taking her wrist. Sally. But. Chucky. It's really cute, she said, starting to run with the little girl. At that moment, all the students of the academy, as well as some adults, began to approach, but at that moment, among all the students, Kiryu came out, who was very worried about the brunette. Kiryu. Issei, please wake up, I screamed without receiving a response. Issei, please don't leave me. Seeing that he didn't react, the brunette decided to dial a number while she took the brunette's hand, without knowing what was happening in her subconscious. Issei's subconscious. The figure that was previously trapped by a strange layer of rock, making it clear that he was in a state of lethargy until everything around him began to shake and the layer began to break, revealing blood-red eyes. Just as a loud roar could be heard throughout the place. 1 month later. Issei woke up slowly with some pain, his vision was a little cloudy, but little by little, he began to see more clearly until he noticed that he was in a hospital room. The brunette proceeded to sit down, while he saw that it had a needle connected to a small tube that passed a type of liquid through it. Issei. Where is Toy? I ask with some difficulty. But then she sees how the door opens, revealing a doctor who was a little impressed to see that the brunette had already woken up. Doctor? Wow, I see you're awake. Issei. What am I doing here? Doctor? You suffered an accident, boy, he said, making Issei remember what happened. Issei. How long have I been here? Doctor? 1 month. During that time a girl came to check on you every day. Issei. A girl? Doctor? That's right, her name is Aika Kiryu. Issei. Kiryu has come to see me, he whispered, somewhat impressed. Doctor? Okay boy, since you already woke up, I have to do some tests and then let you go, okay? Issei only nodded and then saw how the doctor approached him, accompanied by some nurses who began to analyze the brunette's body, as well as his blood and other things, while the brunette looked at the window with a serious look. Chapter 3. Issei was leaving the hospital while he had a dead look, implying that he didn't care about anything. He began to feel the rain falling on his face as he walked through the cloudy streets of Kuo City, while thinking about everything that happened in his life. All the abuse, all the humiliations he had to go through. She always wondered why. If he hadn't done anything wrong, why did he have to go through all that? He was walking for almost 2 hours in the rain until he arrived at Kuo Academy. He could see how all the students were in their classes while he was out there watching them, but he didn't give it much importance and continued walking until he passed by the central park of the city. There he sat and let the rain cover his entire body, while he closed his eyes and let his sense of touch feel the rain cover every part, every centimeter of his physique. Issei. Wow, my life has been disgusting, he said in a cold and disinterested way. Sigh. Well, it's going to be, we get what we get and there's nothing that can be done. After saying that, he got up from his place and proceeded to leave the park towards his house, but not before going to the store to buy something to eat. When he arrived he could see that his home was full of dust, but Issei was surprised. It didn't matter and he proceeded to sit in the living room to proceed to eat what he bought a ramen, while turning on the news to see what was happening in the world. TV. In other news, a giant monster tank that appeared out of nowhere has been reported. So far more than 27,000 deaths have been reported in this tragic attack, plus this was what was left of the city, they said, showing the entire city ruined. Issei was a little impressed by that, although he decided to give it the same and switched to another channel, since he had long since lost interest in whatever was happening to the human or supernatural world. Days passed and those days turned into weeks in which Issei had stopped attending school. He had more than enough money to support himself for several years. The only thing he dedicated himself to was playing video games, eating and training. But always, at night when he slept, he had the same dream over and over again. He saw the city of Kuo in flames, all the people, the leaders, the dragon gods dead, although he didn't care about that. But what really scared him was also seeing Kiryu dead in his arms, while in front of him, there was a large colossal figure hidden in the flames that were staring at him, but there was also another giant figure behind him that had blades in his hands, as well as having a single red eye. Both figures stared at each other until they ended up throwing themselves at each other, making the Issei wake up from that dream. While at the academy, everything was silent and sad. You could see the students walking through the hallways of the academy with downcast eyes, just like the teachers. The reason? Simple, the truth had come to light about Issei and the real traitors. Flashback 3 days after Issei's accident, several students could be seen gathered in the academy courtyard. Many were wondering why they had been gathered there, as were the teachers, until Kiryu was seen coming to the front while he had a look would be. Kiryu. Good morning teachers and students of the academy, my name is Aika Kiryu and today I am here present to reveal the truth, she said she would be, and determined by what she was going to do. Everyone did not understand what she meant, what truth she was talking about, but she decided to continue talking so that they would pay attention. Kiryu. Many have rumored about Issei, that he is the traitor of this academy. Student. And yes, it is shout among the students who supported him as well as the teachers. Kiryu. Well, here I have evidence that reveals the opposite, in addition to revealing who the true traitors are. After saying that, he began to show the video he had recorded, revealing that the traitors were the couples from the hidden club. Everyone was shocked by that, but especially the girls from the club, but then Kiryu finished producing the video and then moved on to some images I took of boys kissing other girls who were much more beautiful than them. Kiryu. Now do you understand? Now you see who the real traitors are? After saying that, everyone began to boo the couples, or rather ex-couples of the Grimoire, who were crying without any consolation, while they looked with hatred at the boys who began to run to get out of there. Then flashback Since then everything has been very dull in the academy, there was no longer any energy in everyone's spirits, it was as if everything that characterized that school had already ceased to exist since they began to mistreat Issei. They wondered if he would return, but the ones who wondered that the most were the Gremory, the Haidu, and his ex-partner. Kiryu already knew that he was not going to return, she even had planned to leave Kuo Academy, since it seemed very hypocritical to her how the students tried to remedy the mistake they made, changing Issei's place that was written with insults by a new one just like his locker, just like the teachers corrected the grades they gave him, showing that he was the smartest in the academy, thinking that they were going to make Issei forgive them, without knowing that they had already lost the opportunity to remedy his mistake. Chapter 4. It has been several weeks since Issei left the hospital, now he was in the middle of the forest lying on the grass, while he had what seemed to be a weed in his mouth. The ex-Haidu was very calm, enjoying the air that was on his face, while listening to the waterfall and the animals walking freely around. Issei stayed like that for a few minutes until he saw how the sun began to set between the trees, so without further ado, he decided to get up from the ground and start walking towards his home. He walked for several minutes deeper into the forest while humming a song until he came to a cabin that he made himself with some mother and rock. Issei proceeded to enter his new home that had electricity, thanks to a power generator that had been stolen from a construction zone. The former brunette had decided to change his place of living so that he could not be disturbed for the reason. The teachers, some students and the director of the academy had simply come to bother him at his home. At first, whenever they arrived, he would not open the door and make them think that he was not at home, but the last time it was all the teachers and director, making him go out to tend to them. They had told him that they needed him at the academy and said that they had corrected his grades, seeing that he was the best student at the academy, surpassing Sona Citri, the smartest at the academy, and that he had every right to enter any club and that he would be the captain of the academy's math team. But he politely told them that they could take those words and insert them wherever they wanted and go to hell to slam the door, leaving the teachers in shock. After that he moved so that they would stop bothering him, moving to the forest so he could be in peace and quiet, something he achieved. Now he was sitting in a rocking chair while sharpening a wooden stick and then getting up and leaving the house and putting it outside with the others surrounding their house, then proceeded to enter again, prepared something to eat and sat in the living room to proceed to watch the news, seeing that several cities had been reported destroyed by different colossal beings, but in that case, the news was interrupted by a very important notice. Reporter. This is an emergency notice, all citizens of Kuo are ordered to evacuate the entire city without exception, as a giant creature is heading quickly to the city of Kuo Daiho before the transmission is cut off. Issei was a little surprised by that, but then he saw an explosion forming far from the forest, so he decided to leave his house and start running through the forest until he reached a cliff where he could see the entire city and could see how there were explosions in an area of this to be able to see a large figure that gave loud roars. Issei did not give it much importance and decided to return to the forest, but before entering it, the image of a certain chestnut with braids came to mind. Issei, remembering Aika, only looked at the city being destroyed by the great colossal monster. Issei only gave a sigh to look at the forest again and look at the city once again. He began to think about what to do, whether to go or not, but at that he only thought. A sigh and then see the city with sadness and seriousness. In the city, everything was chaos, people were running for their lives, while the gigantic figure gave loud roars and destroyed everything in its path with only one direction, which was the Kuo Academy where all the students of the academy could be seen. Accompanied by their teachers and parents, everyone was very scared. They began to feel great tremors that became stronger and stronger until they saw how the roof of the academy was torn off, revealing a terrifying colossal figure that was covered by smoke of fire. Everyone was terrified by that, but then they saw how that being began to stretch out his hand to hold them, but before he could touch them a ball of purple energy flew at him, causing him to fall on his back. Since that attack took him by surprise, everyone they did not understand what had happened until they saw the dragon goddess of the infinite office Ouroboros herself floating above them. Office. The dragon goddess of infinity, I'm not going to let you touch these humans. She said it would be her while she prepared more attacks. Xerxes. Office, what do you think? Office. Look leaders, now is not the time to continue hiding our world, now is the time to act without thinking about the consequences for our world. He said it would be making the leaders think about it. Until they begin to see how the creature begins to rise as if nothing had happened. That's when everyone decided to reveal that they were actually the hidden club and in the student council, making everyone shocked by that. The leaders stood in front of the students, parents, teachers and director while they faced the creature that revealed its appearance once the smoke had cleared. Everyone was terrified when they saw the appearance of that thing, but there was one that was recording all that up close and live, which was Aika Kiryu, who was on top of a wall recording everything live, being seen by millions of people. The leaders along with Office and the two clans launched the attack, while that being did the same to start fighting, while it was seen by millions of people. Chapter 5. Kuo City. Everything was in total chaos, destruction everywhere, the city was on fire, but we will focus on the Kuo Academy, or rather what remains of it. The students along with their parents and teachers were taking refuge in the rubble of what was left of the academy, while they saw the very badly injured leaders lying everywhere like the Gremory clan and Citri. The only one standing was Office, who was in her dragon form fighting against Orga, although she took the fight as a simple game, since Office's attacks did not even tickle her. Office tried to put Orga at bay, but it was useless. The great kaiju managed to put the dragon goddess against the ropes, and then gave a strong blow with one of his enormous hands, causing her to fall to the ground while returning to her normal state, falling nearby. Of the students, Orga gave a great roar of victory, causing a great current of air to be caused. Everyone was now very terrified by what was going to happen now, but then they saw how the gigantic beast directed its gaze to a special area of the academy, and that was what was left of the roof of the academy, where Kiryu was with his cell phone recording what was happening, until she saw the creature approaching where she was, starting to run while the beast slowly destroyed the roof until Aika reached the edge of it. Kiryu only looked back to see how Orga gave one last blow to the ceiling, causing the girl to fall while she screamed. All the students and teachers as well as the parents saw this with great shock and concern, especially the parents of Aika, was a few centimeters away from falling to the ground, but before making contact with it, a red flash had passed at high speed, catching her. Everyone was impressed with that and began to look for where it went until they saw that flash descending little by little. Shortly until it hit the ground where it stopped shining, revealing Kiryu with his eyes closed but in good condition, and a certain ex-Haidu that everyone had despised and who was now in front of them. Everyone was shocked to see Issei carry Aika Kiryu as if she were a princess, but what really surprised them about him is that his eyes that were previously hazelnut changed to a deep red in their entirety. He had about 3 red fins on his back, and if her hair had changed to black with a silver strand in the center, the brunette slowly opened her eyes to see Issei carrying her princess style. That action made her blush a little, but they were interrupted by Orga who gave a roar and tried to attack. To everyone in the academy, Issei only lowered Aika carefully to proceed to vad in the direction of Orga, giving a cut to his hand, causing them to retreat a little. Then he proceeded to land on his large claw, beginning to run along his entire arm until he reached Orga's face, giving a cut with his hand that had glowed white like the other. The great monster upon feeling the cut gave a roar of pain and then tried to grab Issei who was flying through the air and then plummeted directly into Orga's eye, stabbing his hands, making Orga let out another roar of pain at that. Everyone was very impressed by that. They never thought that the person they despised for a long time was capable of doing things like that, but among all of them, there were 2 girls who were very worried about him. One was his ex-girlfriend Inai Maraki, who after what had happened, she wanted to see Issei again to be able to repair her mistake, and the other person was Aika Kiryu, who just wants everything to end so she can be with the former brunette. The Haidu family also saw this with impression and at the same time concern for their son. The leaders as well as Office and the clans of the academy had woken up seeing what was happening and were greatly surprised to see how Issei confronted Orga with something that not even they could, although the Haidu brothers were very worried about the former chestnut. Yuriko. We must help my little Ani-chan Daiho trying to go help his brother. Azazel. We can't do anything Yuriko if we didn't even make any scratches. Hitomi. It doesn't matter, we left my Ani-chan alone once and we won't do it again, she said, trying to go help him. The leaders were trying to prevent the Haidu brothers from trying to go help the former chestnut, although Yasaka also wanted to go help him since she remembered the time he had saved her life and she just despised him and that was something that her daughter didn't like. He didn't like it at all since the little girl had grown fond of him. Everyone watched as Issei evaded each of Orga's attacks while watching how he regenerated from each attack he gave, but in that moment of distraction, Orga gave a powerful blow that sent a building flying not far from there, which caused it to fly due to the impact. Collapsed on Issei, making everyone worry about him. Orga, seeing that he had no more problems nearby, decided to prepare an attack towards the academy to finish off the leaders and company once and for all. The leaders only created a magic circle as a shield next to Office waiting for the tank, but then a kind of red beam shot out towards Orga, but the most surprising thing is that the beam, being a few centimeters away from hitting the beast, divided into many more, causing them to explode in different parts of their body, causing great damage. Everyone looked at where he came from, thinking it was Issei until Office spoke. Office. Es impossible, she said in a nervous tone. Searches. What's wrong, Office? Office. The role of the brother of the Circuite is elevating doing. Michael. And that's not good. Office. It rises to levels I have never seen, she said, very shocked, surprising the others. Student 1. Look, something is rising from the rubble. Everyone once again looked at the rubble, seeing how something large began to slowly rise while making grunts indicating that it was very upset. Hiroku. What is that? He asked incredulously. Office. That's your brother, he said, shocking everyone. The flames had intensified a little and then dispersed, revealing the next creature, which had given a loud roar while the fire surrounded it, giving it a very intimidating appearance. Everyone was quite shocked when they saw that being, just as they had been filled with terror when they saw it, but when they remembered what Office had said about him being a Say, they thought that this way they could defeat Orga, but among all of them, Aika was the only one who could. She saw it differently since she did not feel fear when she saw him, but rather hoped that he could emerge victorious. Chapter 6. Everyone was extremely shocked, they could not believe what they saw. On the part of the humans, everyone was shocked, especially those who were in the academy, since the one who was previously their greatest companion and student decided to save them from their perdition by facing that being. Extraterrestrial, in addition to becoming a giant monster in order to face Orga face to face, the supernatural beings were not very different. They knew that he was extremely strong, but they never thought that he was so powerful in addition to being able to transform into a giant monster. But between everyone, Kiryu was the most surprised since she never thought that her love interest was a big powerful monster. Aigen and Orga stared at each other as they moved to opposite sides. Orga roared with great force, while Orga only growled and clashed his blades, producing sparks as he threatened Orga that if he didn't leave he would slice him. Orga didn't pay attention to the warning and threw himself to try to hit Gigan, but he only moved to the side and gave a large cut on his back, causing him to bleed. Kiryu. That's it, Issei, beat him up, he shouted, very happy that Gigan reacted to that attack. Everyone looked at Kiryu in amazement, since they never thought that she would support Issei even more than they know that he is a great monster of such fearsome power. But then they hear a roar from Gigan, who was waiting for Orga to stand up since despite becoming a monster, he still maintained his code to defeat an enemy standing and not kill him in a cowardly way, a code that only he respected and not anyone else. When Orga was already standing, he tried to hit Gigan again, but he evaded the blow and proceeded to cut the left side of his neck with his right blade. Orga tried again to hit him, but Gigan once again dodged the blow by stabbing him. His right blade on his shoulder causing Orga's blood to splash a little on the ground. The alien, seeing that Gigan surpassed him in hand-to-hand attacks, decided to jump back, taking distance from Gigan, who only proceeded to get into a fighting pose, starting to provoke Orga, which worked but not as expected, since Orga fired his shoulder cannon hitting Gigan, sending him into a building causing it to fall on top of him. Everyone was worried about that since they thought that Gigan had suffered great damage, but that worry went away when they saw how he rose from the rubble, seeming very upset about it. Everyone saw Orga, who was preparing another similar attack, while Gigan prepared one of his rays, so both of them threw their attacks colliding with each other, causing a large explosion in the entire area. While the roar of both monsters could be heard, everyone who was near there was shocked. They began to approach a small crater that had been formed by the explosion, and what they saw surprised them quite a bit since in the middle of the crater they could see two people. The first was Issei, who was wearing black armor and said that they were silver, two large blades in his hands, just like he had a cape. The other person, to everyone's surprise, was a woman with dark gray skin with long light gray hair, large claws and a kind of extra armor, similar to that of the hunchbacked monster, implying that he or rather she was Orga. Orga. That wasn't bad at all, Gigan, ha, he said mockingly, starting to get up just like Gigan. Gigan. Tell me, what do you want, Orga? He asked in a serious way while he looked straight into her eyes. Orga. He sent me and you know who I mean, he said, making Gigan look serious while the others who heard saw that smiled with a bad feeling. Very soon he will come and he wanted to know if you wanted to join us, but I see that you have already made your decision, he said, looking at the humans and supernatural beings present. Issei. That's not your concern, Orga, he said, annoyed. I don't give a damn if they live or die, he said, shocking everyone with those words. Orga. Okay, let's see if you can confirm your words. After saying that, he fired his cannon in the direction of the academy. Everyone in that place could not do anything to avoid it, so they just closed their eyes, but they felt that the attack never came, and when they opened them again, they saw something that took them by surprise. In front of them is Gigan, who had received the attack trying to withstand it, but they could notice how Orga increasingly increased the strength of his attack, making Gigan begin to retreat little by little, until Gigan hit the ground with his two blades. Shooting out at Orga in order to attack her, she tried to get away from the attack, but unfortunately for her, Issei managed to attack her, starting to rise to the sky in order to take her away from the city, while everyone watched as the two of them were walking away and Kiryu continued recording what was happening. Chapter 7. All the students, parents, citizens of Kuo City looked at where Orga and Issei Gigan flew away. They didn't know what to think or what could happen now. But then they heard a strange sound, turning to the origin of that sound, seeing the supernatural beings, or more specifically, the dragon goddess of the Infinite Office, who was trying hard to do something. They did not understand what she was doing, and when they were going to ask, they saw what she made appear. A kind of purple mist while singing. Office. Oh, I, the goddess of infinity, invoke the seeing mists, please let me see what happens beyond my sight. After finishing that song, the mist settled in front of everyone while it began to show something. They were some hills that were very far from the city of Kuo. They didn't understand why he showed that until they saw something start to fall from the sky, but as they looked better they could see that it was Orga who was being hit hard by Issei Gigan as they fell, but Orga responded quickly by connecting 2 blows to the stomach of Gigan and then being held by the shoulders by the white-haired man, both roared with great force and then hit the hard rocky ground, creating a large curtain of dust. After a couple of minutes they saw how a large crater had formed due to that impact of the two, and then they saw how Orga came out of the crater, which was somewhat dazed. She proceeded to get up and try to return to her 5 senses, but none of that appeared. Issei Gigan behind her giving a cut with one of his blades, forcing her to retreat several meters, leaving a cut on the girl's chest which quickly healed while Orga smiled maliciously, shocking everyone except Issei Ghidorah. Orga. Everything they said about you among the stars is true, you have become very weak, she said arrogantly. They both ran against each other. Gigan tried to give another cut, but Orga hit Gigan's face with a strong blow to start hitting him with a great series of blows, making him retreat and then give him a strong uppercut, causing him to be thrown a few meters away. Back under the shocking gaze of everyone, but a fear from Kiryu who was quite worried about the white-haired man. Orga. So that's it, huh, after being a kind of hero. Is that why you brought us here? To protect people? She said, I asked while she looked mockingly at Gigan. Well, the citizens of Kuo saw what was happening and heard what Orga was saying. Well, I have bad news for you, Gigan. Those people you want to protect, he said, hitting her twice, making her step back. Now they think you're a worse monster than me. After yelling that, he tried to hit Orga, but he didn't realize that he had only made him angrier, so he grabbed Orga's fist, squeezing it tightly, and then headbutted him, burying the blade that was in his forehead in front of Orga and then gave her a big blow that sent her flying several meters. Everyone was very, very terrified to see how Issei Gigan was now. She was quite angry, so she shot some metal discs with blades in order to kill Orga, but she realized that and barely dodged her discs, receiving a cut on her shoulder that she couldn't heal. Orga. Damn, I scream, quite annoyed by that. So he used the cannon on his shoulder to hit Gigan squarely, who tried to withstand that attack. Everyone saw how several rocks and trees were sent flying by the force of that cannon, but Gigan hit the ground hard, creating a large curtain of dust. Orga stopped his attack because of that and waited for Gigan to come out of there. But she never thought that he would be next to her and attack him with the rays of his eyes that divided, hitting Orga's entire body, and thus he repeated his attack over and over and over again until she stopped seeing a large curtain of smoke. After several minutes the curtain dispersed, revealing a vastly injured Orga, even missing pieces of her body and flesh. Gigan was ready to end her life, but something happened that no one saw coming. Orga, with the only arm he had left, grabbed Gigan's arm where he had the blade to kill her, and in a desperate attempt he opened his mouth to the height of his stomach and tried to bite Gigan. Everyone was shocked by that. They saw how little by little Gigan was being devoured by Orga, but Kiryu was the most shocked. She was scared to death, seeing how that thing devoured her love interest. She wanted to do something. He wanted to help, but he knew he couldn't do anything. He only had to trust Issei to get out of this, and then they saw it. They saw how Orga began to expel smoke from his body, but more from his mouth, as well as turning red. And then explode, taking with it miles of trees that surrounded them, as well as being visible in the distance from Kuo. Everyone was more shocked by that, but among the smokescreen they could see a figure that was becoming more visible with each step, and then they saw Issei Gigan was standing there with his eyes closed, and then opened them showing that they were glowing red, indicating that he was responsible, and then gave a loud roar in victory, while everyone in Kuo cheered his name, and the supernatural being stared at him seriously, while Kiryu only had a sweet smile while holding his chest. Chapter 8. A few weeks have passed since the fight in Kuo between Orga and Issei Gigan. Since then things have taken a big 180 degrees turn. To begin with, the entire human world knew about the supernatural, thanks to the events broadcast live from Kuo on only Kiryu, thus forcing the supernatural beings to reveal themselves to the world officially. The appearances of the cages had also become very frequent. Several only destroyed cities without any provocation, but there were others who fought with these monsters and protected the people. Those monsters were quite well known thanks to their local cultures, such as King Caesar, Kong, Rodan, Anguirus, Behemoth, Methuselah, Jet Jaguar, Brillante, Batra, Zilla, Scylla, Mothra, among other monsters. Since then humanity has tried to prepare as best it could to be able to withstand the appearances of the Cages and the Titans. But even though they were afraid of these giant radioactive monsters, there was someone who filled them in on the difference between Titans and Cages. That person was Ika Kiryu, who had remained hidden since what happened in Kuo, and in addition to creating a podcast called The Truth of the Titans, where she explained the differences between the Titans and the Cages, as well as their local legends, and that there were different conspiracies against them, but the one who talked the most was Issei Gigan, his favorite Titan. Pentagon meeting room. You could see the different leaders of the world as well as the leaders of the Supernatural Alliance, along with their companions and the DXD group. You could see how they were all watching a large screen that had Podcast of Truth written on it of the Titans and had as logo an image of Gigan. They listened as Kiryu's voice spoke about everything he knew about the Titans. Kiryu. Welcome to my Titans Truth podcast, chapter 23. Look, the government wants to eliminate the Titans who have fought for us. Tell me, haven't I been clear enough with what I've said in the previous chapters of my podcast? The only thing the Titans want is to protect us. They have fought for us in this war that started in Kuo a few weeks ago. King Caesar, Kong, Anguirus Batra, Mothra, Gigan and among other Titans have fought for us to be able to protect us from these evil beings. That all they want is to destroy our world, and what the government wants is to destroy the only beings that stand between us and total annihilation. Listen carefully, if we want to survive we must learn to live with the Titans. One of the world's leaders cut off the production of the podcast to no longer listen to nonsense, according to him and some of those present. Yes, leader. And what do you think? Xerxes. I say she's crazy, living with monsters, of course. Azazel. Xerxes, I remind you that one of those monsters saved our asses in Kuo weeks ago. Isaka. Besides, that monster is the same person that you despised and humiliated for these pathetic excuses for heroes, he said even more coldly to the Haidu brothers. Note. The Fallen, Yokai and Nordic factions did not treat Issei badly. Michael. Hey, we shouldn't stray from the topic, we have to vote on what to do with these supposed Titans. Yes, leader. We must exterminate them. Zeus. I think the same, after all it is an offense that they call themselves Titans. Odin. If I remember correctly, that Titan called Kong saved Olympus from Kronos, he said with a mocking smile, remembering how Zeus and the other Olympian gods could not do anything against Kronos. Zeus. And what about that Titan Rodin who humiliated the serpent of the world? Odin. I appreciate it, really. He saved many of my people. Leader of Mexico. These Titans have protected us from true threats in addition to doing great wonders. Leader of Spain. Like which ones? Leader of Japan. The mysterious forest of Sarada. China's leader. Animals that were previously on endangered lists. Azazel. The seas are less polluted and the polar caps return to normal. Isaka. These Titans only come to protect us, and one of them is Issei who saved us countless times before becoming what he is now. Leader of Mexico. The great and invincible Gigan Daiho showing an image of the aforementioned on the screen. Leader of Japan. So far he is the one with the most dead cages. Leader of Mexico. That shows that the Titans only want to help. Yes, leader. And how will we know that one day they will not turn against us? Why has this planet always belonged to them? Said a man, entering the meeting together with several researchers. Leader of the US. Never request your presence here, Professor Serizawa. He said seriously while he looked at the aforementioned. Serizawa. And I consider that an offense. Furthermore, they have been the first gods of our world by law and by nature, he said. Well, several of his researchers gave them photos they took in different parts of the world where there were paintings of these Titan senators and leaders of both worlds. The Titans are the only ones who prevent us from being on the brink of extinction, and if we exterminate them it will be our end. There was a great silence in the room while some began to think what would be better, let them live or kill them. Although on the one hand they knew that if they were killed they would no longer have any defense against the cages. But before anything was said or done there was a great tremor accompanied by a great roar that shook the entire place, and then a great roar was heard that alarmed everyone in the boardroom. Chapter 9. The great tremor was felt throughout the room, accompanied by a large and powerful roar. Without further ado, everyone present left the meeting room as well as the Pentagon, seeing how several tanks and F-18s attacked a large figure, creating a large screen of smoke. That covered it, but you could see how gigantic tentacles destroyed various things and buildings, as well as devastated the army, as if it were nothing. Office. But what the hell is that? But at that moment several missiles collided with that thing creating a large explosion, but when the smoke dissipated, they could see the shape of that beast, which seemed to have no scratches, just as it was very, very upset by that attack, beginning to destroy everything around him with more aggressiveness and lack of control. The army tried to do everything possible to stop that thing, but every effort was useless, so Office decided to enter the fight by transforming into a large dragon, while she was followed by the DXD team and the alliance leaders. The great beast grabbed Office by the neck with one of her pincers and slammed her to the ground and then hit several members of the DXD team with one of her tentacles, leaving them out of the fight. Everyone tries their best to push it back, while some members of the army evacuated the city as fast as they could, but the big beast itself had no trouble dealing with the human army, the DXD team, the leaders and Office. In fact, he was just playing with them, he was humiliating them as if nothing had happened. He held Office by her tail and began to pull her towards him and then began to spin around until he let her go, causing her to crash against the White House. It seemed that there was nothing that could stop him until out of nowhere a rock fell on her back, drawing his attention. Everyone turned to the direction where the rock came from, seeing a large screen of smoke while some buildings collapsed, but then the smoke dissipated a little, revealing one of the largest titans in the world, Kong the King of Skull Island. Most of the citizens were happy to see the great Alpha Titan who seemed to be very upset. The kaiju and the Titan stared until the great kaiju hit the ground with his tentacles, and Kong did the same with his fists and then throw himself at the kaiju, giving a loud roar. The kaiju tried to attack Kong with his tentacles, but the king climbed a building dodging the attack and then jumped at the kaiju and gave him a strong blow to the face, stunning the kaiju, and then grabbed him again and gave him another blow and then applied a padlock and pushed him to the side away from him. Then he proceeded to run towards him and elbow him in the jaw and another in the head and then hit his back like his arms and finally give him a couple of kicks, knocking him down. Rias. Impossible. Sona. Could that ape take down that monster? But then they see how the monster gets up and grabs Kong by the neck with one of his pincers to hit him on the head with the other, and then Kong holds both pincers and lifts him on his back and then lets him fall, causing a great tremor. Kong was proceeded to crush his head until the monster hit him with one of its tentacles, knocking him down. Kong tried to get up, but the Cagus got on top of him and was going to proceed to bite his neck, but Kong took a large rock and stuck it in his head. His mouth to hit him with great force, knocking him off of him. Kong hit his chest and then saw how the kaiju tried to attack him, but Kong grabbed him by the pincers and then gave him a good headbutt and held him with a padlock, starting to cross buildings with his head while hitting him with great force, but in that case, the kaiju he held Kong by one arm with his tentacles tightly to get him off of him and throw him away from him, falling on top of what was left of the White House while Kong held his arm, but in that he dodged a blow from the great beast that tried to hit him. Stick his tongs in his face. Azazel. I think the giant ape dislocated his arm, he said, watching as Kong tried to defend himself with one arm. Auden. We must do something. Isaka. Like what? That damn crab octopus humiliated us. But then they see how Kong gives a powerful blow to the kaiju in the face, only to receive several blows from the monster's tentacles, knocking him down. The kaiju was going to proceed to end Kong's life until nothing was left. Several red energy projectiles rained down above the kaiju, which began to retreat after something fell from the sky, creating a great tremor and raising a large amount of smoke. The smoke began to dissipate little by little, but not that, some discs were shot out to cut off 4 tentacles of the kaiju monster and returned to the smoke that completely dissipated, revealing that it was Gigan. The kaiju gave a loud roar as it approached him, but then Gigan extended his 2 blades in front and fired his cables, wrapping them around the kaiju's neck to proceed to turn around, lifting him off the ground, demonstrating the great physical strength he had, and then whipping him forcefully to the ground while he laughed sinisterly, sending a great chill through everyone present, even Kong himself. Chapter 10. Everyone watched as the kaiju tried to free himself from the ties he had on his neck, while Issei Gigan pulled with great force the cables that he shot from his knives. The kaiju desperately pulled the cables, but Gigan's strength was so great that it seemed that he would be able to pick it up and crash it to the ground, as if it were nothing, which was literally what he did when he pulled the cables to make a few turns, while the body of the great kaiju levitated thanks to the force of the homicidal monster, causing it to hit several buildings to stop, then crash him backwards into the ground. Everyone could not believe the great strength he had. Everyone stared at the great smokescreen that was created after the great blow he received from the space kaiju, but then some tentacles came out of the smoke, wrapping around his neck, arms, legs and Gigan's waist, lifting it off the ground to proceed to smash it against the ground several times, as well as some buildings and house, and then give one last hit to the ground with great force, immobilizing the space kaiju while preparing some of its tentacles to finish it off. Brias. It can't be. Iriko. We must help him, she said, worried about her brother. Kuroku. It's easy to say it, One-san, but in reality we are nothing before them. Hitomi. As much as I want to deny it, Kuroku is right. But then they heard a great roar, seeing how the kaiju had one of his kicks buried in the side of Gigan's body, which gave a great roar of pain because of that. The kaiju was about to end his life with the intention of crushing his head, but then the kaiju was attacked by Kong, who picked him up and threw him to the ground, and then began to give several blows without stopping. But at that point a tentacle wrapped around his neck in order to pull him and throw him to the ground. But before the kaiju could do anything, Gigan cut the tentacle as if it were nothing, freeing Kong, which he took advantage of to kick him hard in the middle of the chest, causing him to be thrown against some buildings that were formed in a line in the same area, causing him to he crashed into them and fell on top of the enormous kaiju, while Kong stood up and positioned himself next to Gigan. Zerches. It seems like they are going to start working as a team, she said, watching how they both raised their guard ready to fight. Isaka. You think you can handle that thing, he said, watching the kaiju get up very upset. Michael. We just have to have faith that they will make it. Auden. You're right, Michael. Azazel. Crush him, he said seriously. After saying that, the three monsters threw themselves into the fight where the crab octopus kaiju tried to keep the two titans at bay, who gave accurate combined blows. While the great kaiju retreated from the blows that the two colossal titans delivered, Kong managed to catch one of the octopus's tentacles, pulling it hard, attracting it to him, and then giving it a strong blow, sending it flying against Gigan, who fired his eye rays, hitting the kaiju squarely. Heroku. Wow, it seems like now he's the one getting the beating, he said, watching as Kong was hanging on the kaiju's back, beating him, while Gigan was giving him big cuts on the kaiju's chest. Office. We were just a game for that thing, but those two titans are giving it a big beating that not even Trixie is capable of giving it. Gigan proceeded to hit the ground with his two blades, shooting at the kaiju, attacking him, and the two shot into the sea where they submerged. Everyone approached the shore, even Kong, who was staring at the water where several bubbles could come out, and also the sea lashed very roughly, making it clear that the kaiju and the space titan were fighting under the sea. Hitomi. Come on Ani-chan, I know you can, she said, very worried while she looked at the sea. But then something happened that they did not see coming. A great roar was heard, a great explosion that shook the sea, and also created a huge wave that hit the shores of Washington, D.C. with force. Several minutes passed until the sea calmed down, and then they spent another few minutes where they expected to see the fighting champion emerge from the sea. At that moment, a large curtain of water formed in front of them, making them think it was the kaiju, but at the moment when all the water fell from above the large figure, they saw that it was Issei Gigan who gave a loud roar while clashing his large knives. Bakeno. Sigh, I thought I wasn't going to free her. Kaneko. I never doubted him for a second, he said quickly, receiving bad looks from his classmates, making him stick out his tongue in an insult. But then they saw how Gigan and Kong were staring at each other, creating an extremely heavy, tense atmosphere as sharp as a very sharp sword. Everyone felt that at any moment they would both throw themselves at each other to fight, but then they saw how Gigan realized. They half turned to fly away, while Kong began to run to the opposite side as they left behind the city of Washington, D.C. in ruins with its inhabitants grateful for the two titans who saved their lives. Chapter 11. Weeks have passed after the fierce battle that took place in Washington, D.C. And since then the attacks have been increasing against the capitals of all countries, such as CDMX of Mexico, Tokyo of Japan. They attacked Washington again when it was in the process of reconstruction, among others. But all those places were protected by the great guardians of the earth, who had decided to settle in each country for greater security of the population. The only one who had not done that was Issei Gigan, who only traveled around the world observing, hoping to see a conflict in which he could get involved to have a little fun. In the supernatural world things were not better, in fact they were much worse, since not having the support of even one of the guardians, the lengths they suffered before taking down one of those attacking monsters was enormous. Not even with the help of Office, they managed to stop those beasts before causing great destruction and loss of both civilians and soldiers in battle. They were so desperate for a solution until they remembered a certain ex-Hayadu who had shown great power in the last two encounters they saw of him, so without further ado, they tried to somehow get him to return to them. Of course he didn't. I was going to access it by chance, so they thought in a not so intelligent way that ended up costing them in the end. Flashback China, Hong Kong. The city of Hong Kong had been the victim of an attack by a very large and heavy kaiju, luckily the guardian of the place. Matra was near the place, so she managed to buy enough time so that the people will be able to take refuge, but their strength was not enough to stop the uncontrollable rage of that fearsome kaiju, who managed to put the great butterfly against the ropes, but before they were even able to deliver the final blow, Issei appeared in his Gigan's form, managed to subdue and kill the beast, as if nothing had happened, by sticking his blades into the beast's head. But just when he was going to proceed to leave the place, several magic circles were present on the battlefield where the leaders of the group appeared. The Alliance, the Gremory clan and Citri, as well as the two dragon gods. Xerxes. Issei Hayadu, by orders of each leader of the Alliance and the counselors of each faction, you must return to the supernatural world where you belong and be the pillar of the Alliance as it should be, he exclaimed in an authoritarian tone, receiving only grunts from the great space titan. Michael. If you refuse, we are authorized to use force to take you where you belong. Gabriel. Please, Issei-san, I beg you to agree to return with us. Rias. Please Ice, if you do it I will compensate for all the effort and work you have done for us before. Bakeno. Rias, that's not fair. You are always the first for everything, it is now my turn to consent first. Asia. It's not fair, I'm always last, it's time for me to be first even just this once. But before they could continue arguing, Issei Gigan gave a great and loud roar in denial of what they were telling him, so the leaders, seeing that they had no other option, began to create magic attack circles, while the two dragon gods they were in charge of attacking him hand to hand. Of course, in the end Issei won the victory, managing to defeat the dragon gods along with his companions in record time. After all, the threat of the cages can arise at any time anywhere in the world, so getting busy quickly was something he had to do. Then flashback. Since then the Alliance stopped trying to recruit him, although that did not mean that they would not try later. Of course they had to devise a better plan to have him in their ranks, but leaving the supernatural beings we go to the human world. After the constant attacks of the Cages, and also seeing that the Titans could not be in all the places affected by the attacks, so all the nations of the world decided to unite and combine both ideas and resources to make a new weapon that would not only protect their own, but also help to the Titans to balance the balance of this war. Of course, at the beginning there were obstacles in this new project, since the technology they required was years away from being created, and there were no ways to ask the factions for help. But when they thought it would be impossible to create weapons to protect their world, Gigan the Fearsome helped them with that as he managed to intercept several enemy alien ships, the same aliens who were in charge of making the Cages invade their world, thus managing to create in 4 months Mecha Zero, a heavily armed and almost indestructible mecha based on the first Guardian of the Earth which mysteriously disappeared and awaits his return, thus giving birth to the great Mechagodzilla. With it they were based to create more mechas that they could use to defend themselves from alien intruders, since the problem with Mecha Zero was that the neural link that was required was so strong that with 3 pilots, they could not make it work, so they discarded them as a combat mecha. But what they didn't know is that among the candidates for pilots there was one in particular who saw that mecha as a great opportunity to balance or even get a huge advantage in this war against the extraterrestrial invaders. Chapter 12. Tokyo Japan Base M Shelter Place for Mecha Zero alias Mechagodzilla. You could see all the staff walking around the hangar talking to each other or some carrying reports and documents, but for now we will concentrate in the center of the hangar where you could see Mechagodzilla surrounded by several platforms and it seemed like they were equipping him with weapons. But on one of the platforms you could see a certain brunette with braids and glasses looking at the mecha. Kiryu? Sai, why can't you activate yourself? He asked himself looking at the imposing mecha. In another part of the world, Issei could be seen standing on the top of a mountain with his eyes closed. In addition to having his arms crossed, it seemed that he was meditating on everything that had happened, thinking about everything that had happened to his life, but in the reality is that he was concentrating his energy trying to look for an abnormality in the world until he finally found one, causing him to open his eyes and give a sinister smile. Issei. It's time to have some fun, he said as he let himself fall from the mountain. As he was about to touch the ground, a red glow surrounded him, turning into Gigan, taking flight towards where he felt the anomaly in order to have some fun. Back to Tokyo. You could see that everything was really calm without any disturbance, since there had been no sightings of Cages for a week so they could be calm, but a couple of kilometers from the coast, a ship passed calmly by in the water. The crew was resting after a long day of work fishing, but then the captain saw on the sonar a very large object approaching them. He did not understand what was happening until it simply disappeared, dismissing it, thinking that the equipment was simply failing. Captain? Choi, remind me to send the equipment to maintenance. Choi. Yes, sir. But then they felt that something hit them, shaking them abruptly. They didn't understand what was happening until they saw 4 tentacles emerge from the water that crossed the boat from the center, sinking it. In the city, everything was very calm without any worry until out of nowhere the kaiju attack alarm had been activated, ringing throughout the city, causing the citizens to become alarmed and start running in the direction of the nearest anti-Cages bunkers, while the military began to take positions on the coast to delay the threat as long as the population evacuated the city and hoped that one of the Titans closest to them would arrive in time before it was too late. The soldiers began to shoot at the tentacles that were sticking out of the water, which began to attack the soldiers, who little by little were retreating without stopping opening fire. At the moment when the kaiju was close to the coast, it began to come out of the water, little by little revealing his appearance to proceed to walk through the streets of Tokyo, creating chaos and destruction in his wake. The soldiers couldn't afford to allow that thing to reach the center of the city, where most of the people were already trying to enter Mechagodzilla's base, so they just continued opening fire, in addition to putting the weapons to sea. New weapons that they created with the technology of the invading aliens, managing to do a little damage, but the creature using its tentacles managed to destroy those weapons and make the military retreat, making its way. Soldier 1. It's tearing us apart, we need support now, he said through a communicator. We will activate the base's defenses, he said on the other side of the communicator. At that time, at the M base, several missiles were fired at the beast, which roared in pain when it felt the impact of the missiles, and then focused its attention on the base, seeing that many people were trying to enter, so without further ado, it headed towards there, destroying everything in its path. The civilians were terrified when they saw the great beast approaching them. Without a doubt death was already calling them. The kaiju was about to crush them with one of its tentacles. A crimson glow quickly stepped to the side, cutting the tentacles, as well as making the beast retreat. Everyone looked at the sky, seeing how Gigan the Fearsome was floating facing the kaiju, but what surprised them was that he did not have his blades, but now had saws. Gigan activated his saws while his eyes glowed crimson, while the kaiju made his tentacles dance. Gigan fired his I-beams, making the kaiju retreat, and then fired them again at the ground, creating a curtain of dust, blinding a little. To the kaiju. The moment the dust dissipated, he saw that Gigan was no longer there, so he began to look for him without realizing that he was behind him. Taking advantage of that moment of carelessness, Issei attacked him, passing by the M-base. Both of them, Gigan increased his strength even more. Speed while holding it and then releasing it, causing kaiju to crash into a building which collapsed on top of him from the impact. At base M. The soldiers took the civilians to the underground shelter of the base, while the others stayed preparing the defenses of the base, as well as the protection shield, to prevent the kaiju from destroying the base, in order to reach the civilians, and in the process destroy Mechagodzilla. But Kiryu, seeing how Gigan fought against the kaiju, felt that something bad was going to happen, so without further ado, he prepared to see if she could activate Mechagodzilla. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.